How it started, I don't know what you did. Now I'm the gal that's chasing you up. Really flip my lid. Come here, eager beaver, baby.
Hello and welcome to
Was That an Orgy? Woo!
starring Charlene and Teresa Bod,
Yeah.
two sisters that explore the topics of sex, sexuality, gender, and sex positivity. We will also try to answer the question, was that an orgy?
Yeehaw!
Yeehaw!
Hi, everybody. Don't mind me.
She was just wrangling her doggy.
Yeah, wrangling my doggy. That's what I call it.
It's a euphemism for something.
A lot
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we are here today with Dr. Evelyn Dacker, MD.
Hello.
Yes.
Yay.
We are so excited to have her here. She is the creator of STARS, which is a wonderful talk that I've personally given many, many times and has been so instrumental in having really open conversations around sex and sex health and desires and fears and boundaries and
all the
that great
things.
stuff. All
Yes,
the things, really,
yes.
really.
All the
It's like,
things.
yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. It's
Um,
especially good, too, because we've been hesitant to bring it up until now because we're like, is this trademarked, copywritten? You know, can we talk about this?
Yes, I know.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it is, but it's also very shareable
Uh-huh.
and made for everybody to know. It's not like it's owned. It's
Mm-hmm.
like public access to.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think what's important is like if we were going to talk about it without you here in the room, we'd want to make sure that we were talking about it correctly and just not like misrepresenting the idea of it or anything like that. And so I'm glad that you're here to be able to kind of like take us through the idea and how it was formulated and the purposes that it serves, because
Yeah,
I feel like
thank
it
you.
does serve so many.
So many.
Yeah.
It's goddamn sexy, too.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
gotta say, I experienced your STARS, which, by the way, for everyone, just to let you know what we're talking about, STARS is an acronym for communication about intimacy, and I should probably let you explain what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an acronym to help us guide us having really good, consensual, authentic, safer sex conversations. And the whole concept of a safer sex conversation in general, because it's something that a lot of people aren't even aware of. I could go into how it was formed in a moment, but what it stands for is the S is sexual health, STI status. The T is your turn-ons. Your A is your avoids or your boundaries. Your R is your relationship intentions and expectations. And then the last S is safer sex container, or how you want to create safer sex with another person.
Gotcha. I never can remember the last S.
Yeah.
For a while, I just thought it was STAR, but yeah. So the last one, I'll look forward to you elaborating on that one. Yeah.
And oftentimes they kind of mix into one another. What it really is about the 5 things that we really need to understand in order to have, a good, yummy relationships with others. So even if it's intimate, if it's not intimate, it's just these 5 things that we also need to be aware of in ourselves. And it's the things that we're not taught in sex ed or when we're growing up.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it stops you from having those interruptions when you're getting to know someone. Like, if I didn't have the STARS talk to fall back on, I would be like, oh yeah, did I remember to tell you this one thing? And did I remember to, and like, yeah. So it does like help kind of like give it a framework so that
Yes.
you're not just like stopping the moment and going, oh, there was that one thing that I don't like. Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it helps me, the STARS too, talking about your avoids is important. And I like that, the avoids is A, because mine's my asshole. So it helps me remember, don't touch my asshole. That's the thing I always say. So
That works really well.
avoid the a-hole. A is for a-hole. Don't go near the, avoid the a-hole. Okay.
Until maybe somebody will turn into a T of a turn on. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I know. I might find the right person that I'm like, well, I've never had it like that before. Okay.
No one's ever loved my asshole.
Yeah,
the way you love my asshole.
Right, my a-hole turned into a T-hole. A turn-on hole. Right. Yeah, I had a lovely introduction to your stars because Shar invited me. My introduction to SPP was, what was that party that was at the
It was
Jupiter
the 10-year
Hotel?
anniversary party,
Oh,
I think.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where I met you.
Yeah. And so Shar gets a hold of me. She knows that I have this huge pussy costume that it's a long story, but basically I became sort of notorious for it because my picture got taken at the Women's March while I was trying to direct traffic over the Morrison Bridge. People, instead of going under, the bridge and up the stairs, were just like crossing where I-5 South like comes on, the off-ramp onto Morrison Bridge. So I just, to save humanity, I just went out in front of cars and would like spread my big pussy costume open. And I had this like this pussy grabs back t-shirt. So I was like stepping out in front of traffic, like stop, and then waving the people. And then I'd close my pussy and then go like, okay, go cars, go, 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 go. And I kept doing that. And then the photographers started and it made it into the Mercury and the Willamette Weekly. So I had this costume and Shar calls me and she's like, hey, Teresa, there's this huge party at the Jupiter Hotel. I think it'd be a riot if you came down in your pussy costume. And so I was like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll do that. And then as I was driving down to the Jupiter in my pussy costume, I started realizing like, oh my God, did this big pussy bite off more than it can chew? I don't actually have vagina dentata. Because I thought like, I think there's a lot that seems intimidating about the sex-positive Portland subculture until you actually get introduced to it and you find out how much awesome communication there really is in it.
Yeah.
And so one person that was there just, we were talking, getting along, and he said at one point, like, I really want to kiss you right now. I hope I didn't tell this story already on the podcast.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so talking to this guy, and he's like, I really want to kiss you right now. Can I kiss you? And just the consent, the respect, and being given that opportunity to decide without having someone like come on to me was actually a turn on. And so then like, there was makey outy behavior in there, and then some other guy who saw that walked up to me a while later and he's like, saw that kissing, and I was just wondering if I could get one of those kisses. And I was like, yeah, actually, I can't remember what I said, my pussy's all dried up, sorry. And he said, oh well, thank you for taking care of yourself, have a good night. And then as soon as he said that and walked away, I was like, God, that's hot. Come back here. Being respected and given room and supported is such a great turn on. But then I ended up going home with that guy, and he immediately brought out the stars. And
Awesome.
and I was like, wow, this is so cool. He's like, before we go any farther, I need to know your stars. And I was like, what's that? And he spelled it all out for me, and it was so cool.
Yeah.
It gives you so much more security, becoming quickly intimate with especially a new person, to be able to know, to have it all mapped out. Don't do this. I like it if you do this. And being given all the information you need to be able to make informed decisions to best take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
So-
that's exactly what it's about.
Bravo for you for coming up with it.
It's what I came up with is the acronym. The concept I did not come up with. The concept really was formed when I started exploring what sexuality was and what sex positivity was. I was in a very long monogamous marriage, and I started really wondering what else existed, not just in non-monogamy, but just exploring my own sexuality, especially as I was entering my 40s, as my kids were growing up. And I started taking classes, and I heard this conversation first at a class I took at Shebop. And I remember it was actually Allison Moon, who is Reed Mahalko's partner, going through this, like what they call the safer sex elevator speech. And when I heard it, I wrote it all down, and there was probably 11 different elements to it. I mean, it was a lot. And I remember being so excited by it and being like, I want to teach my patients this, because if I could teach everybody this, oh my God, maybe then I wouldn't have patients coming and seeing me for STIs or seeing me for consent violations or even knowing how to navigate this.
Brilliant.
at the same time, it was the same time the Brock Turner case in Stanford, the Stanford swimmer, happened. And I remember listening to Chanel Miller's victim statement. And I listened to the victim statement with my 2 teenage kids. My son was about to go to college, and I was like, how could this still be happening? Like, how could we still be having sexual assault on college campuses? Because it happened when I was young, and we were trying to fight about it. And why didn't my generation do anything to help our children?
Right.
And that's when it became a real passion for me. That's when, like, the safer sex talk was like, okay, this doesn't just belong if you're going to go to a play party. This doesn't just belong in a hookup. This doesn't just belong as part of a kink negotiation, because kink negotiations also have very much of the same elements, as do a lot of tantra. Pujas and tantra events have the same sort of like, what are your boundaries? What are your needs? What are your expectations? So my whole idea was actually to bring it to the mainstream. My whole idea was to bring it to college students and teach college students and young adults that you can actually think about these things for yourselves. Like, think about, what is it that I want with this person? What does it mean to me? And to actually be able to ask your partner, when was your last STI test?
Yeah.
Or to think like, I need to be checked for my sexual health. So all of it. So I started playing around with different acronyms and what would work and what wouldn't work. And, from the heavens, stars came to me. And it kind of like summed it up in a way that I think is not only easier to remember, but also it doesn't have baggage associated with it the way other acronyms have, such as one of the other ones that's probably the most popular is RBDSM. And it's something like relationships, boundaries, desires, something. Yeah, I don't know all of the acronym
It's
to it.
co-opting BDSM in a different
But
way.
that is,
Yeah.
but
That's
that is
confusing.
where I kind of was like, it's
Yeah.
a pretty good acronym,
Yeah.
but then it's linked to kink, which is amazing. And I think there's so much health benefits of understanding all of these different sexual subcultures, because there's so much wisdom in it. There's so much wisdom in it.
Yeah.
But it makes it so, like, if you're a sorority girl, you may not feel comfortable saying to someone, hey, should we do our BDSM? Because they may
Totally.
take it a little bit wrong, right?
Yeah. The whip
So-
comes out.
Exactly. So it makes it more accessible.
Yeah.
And while it's still hard to remember all the letters or what it stands for, it's really the big concept in understanding that these are elements that one should even think about themselves.
Yeah.
When I teach the classes, one of the hardest things that people have gone through is even just something like turn-ons. Like, I've had a lot of women just be like, turn-ons? Like, I'm supposed to know what I want and what I like?
Yeah.
If you're not in a sexuality, sex positive community or are queer or doing any of those things, a lot of us are not taught that we're supposed to like things.
Yeah.
Or to hide that.
Totally agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
as when you were young, when you were in your 19, 20, you're just like, I'm supposed to like what I see in porn or what my boyfriend or partner sees, and I don't have any agency in that myself.
Yeah.
So
Right.
part of the stars conversation, what I really want to teach people is to have that agency for themselves.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to sort of get over that dualistic conflict that's imposed upon women, hopefully less and less, but having to pretend to your parents, at least in our generation, of like, no, I'm not interested in this, I'm chaste and pure, but then covertly going out there and exploring. And I actually wish that this was taught in grade school.
Oh,
I
I mean,
know.
yes.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people saying, why don't you teach it in, middle school and high school? The truth is that it's hard to teach any good sexuality education that's not abstinence based in schools.
Yeah.
There's too much
That's
fear
true.
around sexuality to actually get there. So that's why
Yeah.
I really want to focus on young adults as well as adults, as well
Yeah.
as people who are not as knowledgeable. Like, I went into a lot of these subcultures and explored. And not just because I'm a naturally curious person, not just because I am a sexual human being, but because I really wanted to learn a lot of this knowledge to bring it to the mainstream. I am not. I really, my work, as much as I love being part of Sex Positive Portland and a lot of sex positive communities, my work is in the mainstream because I understand it.
Can I ask too? I'm not familiar with what kind of a doctor you are.
Yeah.
What your practice is focused on.
I am a primary care family physician. So I am, just nuts and bolts doctor. So I see everybody.
Yeah.
And I've been working in the same community for over 25 years.
Great.
So I've had patients that I've delivered who are now having babies. So I see the whole span of humanity from birth to getting older. I get these incredibly valuable insights to what it is to be human in all aspects. So I'm not just an OBGYN that are dealing with females in reproductive years. Like I see everybody, boys, girls, children, aging adults. And, I have some patients that are in their 70s who are still sexually active.
Nice.
And I learned so much from them.
Yeah.
And so that's where my heart is. My heart is in really changing culture and trying to empower people. Empower people to recognize that their sexuality is a really important part of their health.
Right.
Yeah.
And their sexual wellness is an important part of their health.
Right. Yeah.
So STARS is part of that work.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. We are double minting the hell out of each
I
other
know,
today. I call it double minting because, we're so close in age. Sorry, squirrel. But we tend to say, say the same thing with the same tone, nod our heads the same direction.
Probably the same direction.
So I was kind of giggling, just like, oh my God, stop it.
You should just smush my face.
I know,
when
quit
that.
it. I'll just try to say something, counterintuitive. Just to, But anyway.
One of us needs to switch from to something else.
Yeah. I'll just try to sound Swedish. It's good. Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad that your acronym ended up being STARS too instead of Uranus, because that'd be a weirder thing to talk about. I'd like to talk to you about Uranus, and then it would take the conversation a whole nother direction. So I'm glad you landed on STARS and not Uranus. Landing on Uranus.
Me too.
Landing on Uranus. That's one of my avoids. So I'm really
exactly.
glad.
Let's stay away from that.
I had to come up with an acronym because writing out 9 different things for my patients every single time was really too difficult.
Yeah, totally.
And I do, like to say that there are so many people like Reed Mahalko and the kink community that have done so much work to helping us become sex positive in the greater sense. And I'm just able to take it one step further. I think being a family doctor, working with people, having young adults as my children, and seeing all of that to actually hope to make this blossom into something bigger.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It already is. I mean, it's amazing how many
Yes.
people how it's affected me and how I've embraced it and how I'm telling other people about it. And look, now we're broadcasting it.
Right.
You know, it's getting out there.
And one of the things I want to say is you asked, is it copyrighted or trademarked? The workshops are, but not, the acronym is the acronym. In fact, I always said that I'll know it will become successful when nobody knows who I am.
There you go. And it's just in our vernacular.
Exactly. That's what I want. I don't want it to have to be attached to my name.
Yeah.
I want it to just be so known that it just becomes something that people do as part of their dating ritual.
Right.
And the way I do it when I'm out and about is sometimes if I'm on a Tinder date, I make it a game.
So you give them M&Ms every time they answer a question.
My first game is guess what I do for a living. That's kind of a good break the ice because nobody ever gets it right.
Yeah, right.
And the second thing, then I'm like, hey, do you want to play this STARS game? And we just kind of go through it. So it makes it less, oh my God, I have to do this scary thing,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about too is when you guys, when you talk about STARS, when you're educating people, I don't want you to give away the secret recipe, or anything. Okay, good. So do you even have a way that you prescribe in talking about it? Because if it's just the first time you hear it, it's great, but it really helped for me having a pro there to tell me, to show me, lead by example as to how to do it, because it's strange to me at my age, out there, being single. how little people communicate, how uncomfortable people are with communicating. And so now I'm stepping up and kind of being, the teacher to other people. And it's a little, it's a little awkward. It's a little,
Right.
baby
We're
stepping.
changing culture by, I remember back in the 80s, Salt and Pepper, let's talk about sex.
Yeah.
And yet it never happened.
Yeah, crickets.
What happened? We're supposed
Right.
to talk about sex.
Everyone's
Let's
like,
talking about sex, baby.
I know. Let's just like, and to be able to talk about it is the first step.
Yep.
There's
Exactly.
really no right way of doing it. I mean, I teach people in the workshop, we go through each element and then we practice doing that element with people we don't know just to get used to saying it. So, like,
Yeah.
my last STI check was in April and it was blah, blah, blah. And how about you? You know, but we don't actually say that that's the way you're supposed to do it. You can actually do it in any order you want. And sometimes the best order happens to be starting with the R, which is your relationship intentions and your
Right.
expectations.
Yep.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that I don't want it called rats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rats.
So-
Rats.
So,
Yeah.
it depends on the context of what you're doing. Like on my Tinder date, I'll just do it as a game. But if I'm about to want to start a relationship with somebody, then maybe I'll do it in pieces, texting or on the phone. We'll just go through like different elements, or I bring it up in conversations. Or if it's about, I'm going to hook up with somebody, then we'll do it according to what our hookup is about, if that's the case. So I don't maybe need to say, hey, my relationship intention is I really want to find a nesting partner, because maybe with that person, I really don't. Maybe with that person, it's just like, I want to have a good time and this is what I need to be feeling safer in this context.
Yeah, or this is what I'm available for with
Exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I do is I do like coaching groups of people so they learn their own stars, because a lot of people don't know it.
Yeah, it's true. Especially the turn-ons. Yeah, I've noticed that, and especially with female-bodied individuals, like knowing what you really desire and then voicing it is a difficult thing sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I blame the patriarchy.
We could blame it for everything, really.
We really could.
But a lot of it is because like we're at least gals our age are kind of conditioned more to be pleasers, like that's we're rewarded for that. We're taught to do that. And so, we're not taught and supported as much to be in touch with our bodies and what we want and need and our boundaries. It's like, give it all up to the guy, make him happy, because that's our value in this culture, in this patriarchal culture, is what our sex appeal is to men. That's the stick, the measuring stick that we're compared to.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
And I like to say, when I do my stars talk, I like to save turn-ons for the end, because I like that to be like kind of the carrot at the end, because at the beginning I'm like doing this sort of thing where I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell you my avoids, I'm going to tell you my relationship desires and all that stuff. And there's a good chance that you won't like something I say there. So let's go ahead and do that elimination process at the beginning. And then if you make it all the way to the fifth one, then you get to hear like the turn-ons and what I actually want. But like sometimes you just get to R and people are like, oh yeah, it's not going to work for me.
Right.
So
And
your
then you can be
acronym-
like,
I was going to say yours is ARTS then.
it's
That's your acronym.
ARSAT.
Yeah.
ARSAT.
Arst. Arst. That's yours. You're an Arst. Yeah, I like it. It's
Yes,
very Viking.
exactly. It's very Viking.
I usually start with the STIs because I like to know how they respond to that.
Yeah.
If somebody says, "Oh, I had a test and it was all clean," I'm almost like, "Oh, we can't date." You use the word clean, and that means that I'm going to have to educate you, and I don't have time for that. So.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right,
Yep.
right.
I know. I'm really clear. I'm really clear to say clear or -4 or whatever. Just tested negative for this. That.
I
and the
just
other.
learned something just now.
Yeah,
I didn't think about the word clean.
Yeah, clean falls again into that like good,
It's
bad,
shamey.
clean.
It's shamey. It's
Yeah.
judgy.
Exactly.
And when people say that, I just say, yeah, I kind of like it dirty a lot.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
you sound too clean for me.
Yeah.
Right, like
Sorry.
yeah.
I always just say, I got it all. What do you want? I'm a walking disease vendor.
Right.
What do you want? No, just joking.
And it's important for me to make space for people that have an STI that they live with.
Yeah.
It's really important for me because there's so many people who have herpes or they have HPV that are they feel so shamed by it. They have so much absorb so much of our cultural shame and sex negativity that they feel like that defines them.
Yeah.
And it's so important that we make space for people who are living with something to be able to be human and to be sexual and just to not be living as a person with herpes or a person with, chronic HPV or whatever they have, or HIV.
Yeah. I have a friend that's a naturopath, and this is going to be like a controversial thing. That's why I'm not going to say her name. But she was even telling me when we were talking about getting your what do you call it, a VD panel or something?
STI.
STI, thank you. See, I'm just still learning. STI panel done. That she said she even recommends people not getting the HSV test done because she said that there's such a stigma around it in this culture. That the majority of people have like HSV1 and even HSV2. Again, you got the scarlet letters if you're diagnosed with that. Even though it's basically the worst part about it is that there's a stigma around it, and that it basically limits. Because people are so afraid of it and uninformed as to how to deal with it, that they just avoid you. Avoid.
And you know what? That is
to.
the worst reason to not get the test.
Right?
I'm sorry.
Totally.
The herpes is not part of the regular STI panel. Just so everybody knows, because people think herpes is part of the panel. It's not part of the panel. It's not part of the panel because the CDC said exactly what she said. It would be too stigmatizing if you know. I disagree with that. I think if you knew and more people realize that they have it, then it won't be so stigmatizing.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
I mean, it's like, yes, a lot of people have it, and you will recognize that it's not those horrible pictures that you see on Google. When you Google it, it's not like this horrible thing. A lot of people have herpes, and it's very mild. And some people have herpes, and they don't even know it because they never actually express it.
Right.
Now, that being said, I think the reason that one shouldn't get it is because most doctors don't know how to interpret the test results or interpret the test results wrongly or don't know how to counsel their patients on a positive test.
Yeah.
And that part of the healthcare provider intersecting with a person, giving them a diagnosis of an STI is so critical for them not to feel shamed by it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And since most physicians and healthcare providers all have a lot of sexual shame themselves, it's very hard to navigate that with someone to say, you have herpes, and to say it in a way that empowers them rather than shames them.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, this is another one of those things I think should be taught in, sex ed, like junior high or something like that, because kids are fooling around that early.
Oh, totally.
And
The most risky time of getting an STI is between the age of 15 and 25.
Yeah.
Young adults get more STIs than anybody else. So why aren't we providing them with good sexual health positive information?
yeah.
That's my other passion, is actually doing that, actually teaching STIs. And I have a whole new paradigm of ways of reducing transmission that's not based on monogamy, abstinence, and condoms.
Nice.
Awesome.
That is lovely. Yeah. Did you put that, do you have literature? That's another thing I wanted to mention is like, if there's any literature that we can post for people, that would be great. Even if there's like, the stars,
Yes, I
print out.
have I have a website for stars. It's maketimeforthetalk.org.
Great.
I think
Or
we
it
might
could-
have that in the show notes. Yeah.
And it's
Good.
also the stars talk it's maketimeforthetalk.com, the starstalk.org. All of that will
That's
bring you
awesome.
there.
Yeah.
And there's worksheets on like what you like and not like and information on it.
Yeah.
And anytime I teach a class on it, it's also on that website. For the STIs, I'm actually giving a class tomorrow, an online Zoom class tomorrow, and it's at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's actually for a group in Israel. So it's at a really interesting time, yeah. And there is and I'm also creating a course, a video course that people will be able to access. It'll be on the STARS website as well as my own personal website, how to access that course once I'm done.
Is this something you're available for, like this Zoom course that you did, the Zoom class or the talk? Is that something you're available for if people wanted to hire you?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Like I do give classes on it. I do get a lot of people reaching out and wanting free information. Unfortunately, because of my time, it's really hard to be able to give free consults. Right. But if they attend on YouTube, I have a class on HSV and on HPV. On my website, EveleenDecker.com, I have a handbook, a resource guide for both of those as well.
Cool.
Because I believe that if we educate ourselves better on STIs, the way that instead of monogamy, abstinence, and condoms, the way that I recommend understanding and have minimizing transmission is actually through understanding your risks and having a real understanding of your risk tolerance and where that comes from. Because some people have a really low risk tolerance and they're terrified. They're terrified of STIs. Right. But where is that terror coming from? Is it coming from what you've been taught at home? Is it coming from your own body and your own biology? Is it coming from society, your poor sex education? So understanding where that terror comes from and taking out those things that don't serve you. And that's complicated, and I have a whole thing about that. We're not going to get into that today. But that's like pretty much like number one. The second part is understanding you exist in a sexual network. So even if you're a serial monogamist, and a lot of people are, they go from dating one person to dating another person, they don't think anything of it because they're like, well, monogamy, you're supposed to be okay if you're monogamous. Right. The truth is that we live in networks with one another. So becoming aware of that and taking responsibility for who you are within that network is really important. And the third part about it is doing a STARS talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is communication.
Right. And I think that it's one of those things where if we're not practiced at it and we don't have that kind of a lovely structure to go to, people just tend to avoid it. They don't know what to do. Like if there's one person taking the initiative, which now I've learned to do, is say like, okay, we got to talk about our stars. And then it's so wonderful, even though I would say one of the other things you have to deal with is that a lot of the time people want to get to the fucking, they want to get to the sex or the whatever. And some of that too is even anxiety driven, when we can get to the bonding part of it and change our hormones and get the oxytocin, we all feel better. But this is one of those things that is going to make us feel more safe, and especially women who your main sexual response is relaxation. I found that after that guy introduced the STARS talk to me, my anxiety actually went down. My trust and respect for him went up. And then it did make our sexual interactions better because I knew to do this and don't do that, and he knew not to touch my butthole. So that's what it all comes down to.
By the way, in case you didn't get the memo, don't touch your butthole.
Don't touch my butthole. Yeah, so
we have an upcoming skit about Teresa's butthole.
Yeah, I hear there's a song in my near future. Yeah.
So, I didn't think about it until now. We've been saying STI instead of STD, and I think it's important to draw that distinction that it's sexually transmitted infection and not disease, because a disease is different from an infection.
It is.
And I think that is also, that language is more destigmatizing as well.
Absolutely. So one of the examples I use, what's the difference? HIV, if you get HIV, that's an infection. If you have AIDS, that's a disease.
Gotcha.
Right.
So you could get an infection with chlamydia and gonorrhea, but there's no disease associated with it.
Right.
So, that is why it's so important to be clear, because it is very stigmatizing to think about a disease. It used to be venereal disease, VD,
Right.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
back in the days, the sailor prostitute days.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I hear VD, that's what I think of. I think of a sailor at port.
Totally.
Right.
Like with discharge, with the clap.
Yeah, exactly.
Diseased. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like that better too. STIs. So is HIV, or AIDS, is that the only one that's considered a disease now?
No. There's parts of like syphilis, like tertiary syphilis, where it's no longer, when it goes into the brain or the heart or the blood vessels, when it starts affecting the body's function, that's the disease. Even sometimes you could think of herpes, when the people who get really bad outbreaks, they may be having, it's hard to call it a disease, but I would say that is, versus somebody who has the infection and hasn't broken out in years and years.
Right.
Because we all know people like that too, who don't really break out or broke out a little bit, but then never broke out again.
Right. That makes
That's
sense.
not one of the ones that your body can actually conquer, right?
No, with herpes, it's something that lives within your body in one way or another.
Gotcha.
Some people's immune system is able to conquer it. I don't like that wording because it's like,
I couldn't think of the right word.
Yeah, is able to suppress it a little bit better, or they know how to suppress it through their diet or what their triggers are, and they know how to do that better.
Copious amounts of lysine.
Right.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, wonderful.
This is very like humorous conversations. I know we're having these.
Yeah. I know. We just jumped right into it.
I know it's hard to talk about like infections and STIs and be like, oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, right.
So like once if someone were to get, I'm just assuming, once someone had a doctor tell them, oh, you have HSV1 or HSV2, basically you would at that point be like, okay, I'm going to stop getting tested for this, because then they're just going to tell me I'm positive every time, and any negative after that would be a false negative. Or
they probably wouldn't get tested again. But let's be clear, there's two different ways of getting tested for herpes. The one that's the gold standard, which is what doctors and the whole, everybody suggests, is if you have a lesion, if you have an ulcer, if you have an outbreak, then you actually get that swabbed. Because when you swab an ulcer, then it could actually determine, this is actually herpes type 1, because you can get herpes type 1 genitally. That's the lip one. It's very rare to get herpes type 2 above the neck, though. So herpes type 1 is very prevalent, especially a lot of people get it in childhood. They can get it anytime through their life. It's not necessarily
and in utero,
sexually.
right?
You
can't get it in utero, but you can by passing through the vaginal canal, right?
Well, herpes type 2, because that's the one that's usually, you could get herpes type 1 in utero, it's very rare, but it's herpes type 2, the one that lives in the boxer short region. If you're having an outbreak, it can be transmitted to your infant, and that is not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Right. And what's amazing about it too is a lot of people don't know that, I used to think so ignorantly, that it was transferred through the genitals or through semen. And then I remember you talking when you were in art school about a girl who would break out with herpes blisters, HSV2, on her ankle, right?
God, I don't remember.
You told me that. I remember it.
I know people who get it in other areas that are not the genitals, but yeah.
And the way they know that is that lesion is swabbed.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So that way, if you've had an outbreak with a lesion that's swabbed, you never need to have another test because you know you have it.
Right.
So the controversial one is the blood test that looks at the antibodies to see if you've built those soldier cells against that particular virus, but you could come back positive and not know where that virus lives. So let's say you come back positive for HSV1, the lip one. Well, it could be in your genitals, but you don't really know. And what if you've never broken out with it, but you have these antibodies? What does that tell you? It really, there's a lot of false positives in the testing. And if the doctor doesn't know that, it's really easy for them to say, oh, you have herpes, but it may not be true. It depends on the lab test and knowing how to read it.
Right.
Oftentimes, if it goes down, if that viral load goes, all of a sudden the antibodies go down, was that a false positive? It could have been. It's just really difficult. And then what happens if you have that? You've never broken out, but do you have herpes?
Right.
You can, because there's herpes that you may not realize is herpes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some women get it on their cervix or on their vagina, and if they have it on their cervix, it may feel differently, and they may just have like a clear discharge from it, and they think it's just normal discharge, or they think it's a bacterial vaginosis, or they don't actually realize that it's herpes.
Yeah, right.
It's a very interesting virus. Actually, I'm very fascinated by that virus. It's a
Yeah,
very
me too.
interesting virus, but it's also not a virus that's a horrible thing.
right. It's not like
It's not.
threatening.
It's not a scarlet letter.
right.
Let's
right.
remove the scarlet H, because
Yeah.
it is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so damaging. And I work with people that it's so damaging that feel they could never be with any other person again because of it, even though they haven't had a breakout in 5 years.
Right.
Right. And I
So-
didn't realize too. I always just assumed until we started doing this that it was sexually transmitted, as in it comes through semen or vaginal
It's
fluids
contact,
or something.
skin to skin
But
contact.
it's skin to skin.
And mucous membranes to mucous skin, and through
Right.
cuts or rough sex. And people who have HIV have an increased risk of getting other, like especially herpes, have an increased risk of getting herpes. So
Right. Right.
it's just really important to kind of
Yeah.
to realize that, like, first of all, we give each other stuff all the time.
Right.
I'm sorry, like, have you ever had your heart broken?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Are you scared of getting your heart broken again?
Yeah.
But does it stop you from trying?
Yeah.
No.
Kind of. I mean, less
Teresa,
more
you're
than
like,
her.
yeah.
Yeah. Actually.
I mean, sometimes it
I'm on
makes
no
us
dating apps.
frightened, but we still want to fall in love. We still want to, we desire that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes we get hurt by people, or they have a certain behavior that we carry as part of our baggage, but we get over it. We work through it. We allow ourselves to continue living.
I hope you get a book about that, because that's a book I want to read next. How do you get over it?
You know? Whereas, like, you think that, oh my God, if somebody gives me an STI, that stops me in my tracks.
Right.
That's the most horrible thing a person could give me.
Yeah. I'm glad that I came out of the gates. I lost my virginity and I got HPV and chlamydia. Woo! Winning right here.
winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, winner, chicken. I know how to pick them, you guys.
Most women get HPV. Most
Yeah.
humans get HPV.
Hey, and guess what? Okay, let me know if this doctor was full of shit. But the last time I had like an STI, blood test done, they said that that my body had fought off the HPV,
Yeah.
that it wasn't detectable.
Right. That one your body does fight off for
Yeah.
most people.
And here's what I'm curious about too. So, like, my body fought it off. Does that mean like it has the antibodies and I can't get it again? Because there's different strains out there. So could I be reinfected with a different strain of
Yes.
HPV?
Yes.
Damn it.
Yes.
Thought I was safe. I was like,
thought
got
you had
that one down.
superpowers
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
There are over 200
Super puss.
strains of HPV.
200. Oh my God.
And recognize that HPV is like the common cold.
Yeah.
Everybody is pretty much infected by one strain or another. If you're going to have sex more with than one person in your life, and they have had sex with more than one person in your life. The only people that really will never get HPV are people who have never had intercourse, and they have intercourse together, and that's the only partner they ever have for life.
Is the vaccination they're giving people, is that just for the kind that creates cervical cancer, or is that for all of forms
It's
of
for
HPV?
9 strains of it.
Okay.
And
9 of 200.
9 to 200, but the kinds that are the most highest risk, plus 2 strains that cause genital warts.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's the
That
one I
would've-
was lucky
that
enough
would
to
have
get.
taken
Yeah.
care of your issue. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I wish we had time for that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it too, and I had the kind that where they had to give me a colposcopy. And,
yeah, so you had this a high risk cervical.
Oh, yeah, that was not fun.
Which
Yeah.
is why
Yeah.
vaccinations, everybody's favorite topic these days,
Yeah.
is important. And, you know, it's definitely one thing that I have a lot of patients are like, oh no, I don't want to vaccinate my children for that because they will just have one partner. I'm like, yeah, but you
Oh my
don't know.
God.
Even if they do, maybe their partner's going to pass away when they're 40 and then, you know, they're at risk, or you just don't know.
Yeah.
I do recommend the Gardasil. It's the HPV vaccine for everybody over the age of 11, ideally between the age of 11 and 14.
Did your girls get it?
They both got it
Yes.
on schedule.
And boys,
Nice.
and
Okay.
boys, because
No side
boys,
effects.
boys give it to girls,
Yeah.
girls give it to girls,
Yeah.
boys give it to boys.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's just know we all give it to each other.
Yeah.
That's right.
I really want to move away from this idea that everything is just penis and vagina.
Yeah.
Right. It's true.
And what
it's
is
true.
penis and what is vagina?
Ooh, and isn't another thing that I heard is like, so, you know, HPV, that's the virus that even creates like warts on your hands and
Yes,
fingers. Now,
yes.
if you have warts on your hands and fingers and you touch someone's genitals, they can get the
No.
warts on the genitals. They can't.
No.
Someone told me that. Okay, I'm glad I asked.
It's both
No.
HPV, but they're just different strains, and HPV likes different areas.
Gotcha.
Ah,
Okay.
that's cool.
That's good to know. So if you're with someone with warty hands, don't be afraid.
Right.
They might be a little rough around the hood and the menorah,
Have a
but you
little
know.
extra
Exfoliating. A little
exfoliating.
exfoliating. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you know what I wanted to make sure we got to too before, I have no idea what time it is, but
We have
the
some
last
time.
S, that's the one I don't know about. So there's STIs, your turn-ons, your avoids, your relationship, you know, needs, expectations, boundaries. And the last S, can you
So-
explain that?
Yeah. So at first it was like safer sex, you know, for safer
Practices,
sex
right?
practices, right?
Okay.
And as I started working with it and over the past 5 years, I realized really what we need to do is talk about how to create a safer container for ourselves, a safer container for our sex, a safer container for our relationship, because when we think of safer sex, everybody thinks, oh, condoms and contraceptive management. That's it, right? That's how we make it safer. Well, again, then we're just being reactive against wanting to like have STIs or have an undesired pregnancy. But safety is so much bit more than that, especially for people who are raised as women. In this culture, right? We have a different feeling about what feels safe to us. And to be able to really open up and be in our most luscious turn-ons, to really get our expectations and our needs met, to be able to have our boundaries held, we have to know what we need to feel safer in the situation and safer in our bodies.
Right.
So that S is for us to consider in ourselves. What do we need? And also, what do we need to express to a partner? So for me, for example, alcohol is a big deal. If I feel like if I've drank too much, then I may not feel safe in that in that context. So if I'm having a conversation with a new partner, I would say I don't want to have any sexual interaction if I've drank more than 3 drinks. Usually it's 2, you know? And by the way, I'm counting how much you drink.
Oh, yeah.
Because I do let my partners know, because unconsciously I do count, because I want to know where they're at. But I may feel okay if they're using cannabis, because I feel that people can still consent with that. So that's part of my conversation. I do talk about things that could alter chemical as well as sex brain. Because, you know, sometimes you say, okay, yes, let's get together, but let's not have any penetration of whatever you define as penetration. But then you're in sex brain and you're like, oh, I want it all.
Yeah,
Right?
Oh,
right.
been there.
So, right.
Yeah.
So, like, part of my safer sex is like, hey, if I get into sex brain, I already said I don't want that. That's important to respect. Because if then they cross that boundary, then that means like, not good. Right.
Right.
Another one that I talk to a lot of young adults is like, if you go to somebody's house, what does that mean for you? Like, are you going to tell a friend? Do you need to let another person know where you're at? Do you have your location on your phone all times?
Right.
And if that's what you need, that's okay. And it's okay to tell your partner that too. Like, hey, sure, I'm going to go over your house, but I need to let you know that in order for me to feel really comfortable and safe, I have a friend that knows where I'm at.
Right. Yeah, that's
good.
smart.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
So those are just a few things that we need to kind of understand about ourselves. And this is not just people with vaginas. I mean, I think this extends
Absolutely.
to everybody.
Right.
Except that people who are grown up with penises don't think about these things quite as much. I mean, sometimes when I hear gay men, what they do, that they go on Grindr and have like different men come to their hotel rooms. I'm like, oh my God, there's so few women that I know who would do that. Like just random people come to their hotel rooms to have sex with them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people with vaginas who do that, but it's just rarer because there's this feeling of like, we need to create a bubble.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of fear wrapped up in that. Like I always, the first thing I thought of when you said that was, oh my God, that's the woman who in the movie, she gets killed like right away. You know, like that is that's the thing. She's like the horror movie, she's the first to die.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
it's like
the sexual one.
Yeah, because she was playing too loose and fast or whatever. Yeah,
I always assumed a little bit was our biology. Like again, men, biologically, they're designed to spread your seed, and we're to be discerning.
It's
know.
patriarchy.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm probably just
there's some
projecting my own experience.
There's some hormonal differences, but come on, safety, the feeling of safety, and what feels safe in anyone.
Yeah.
It's patriarchy. So we have to acknowledge that. But these are ways that we change it. These are ways, this conversation is a way that we all gain ownership over it and become beyond that. And so, in order to create that safer container, that's what the S is about. It's really about thinking that, we all need to do that for one another.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And sure, we could talk about contraceptive management and STIs, and that's part of it too. Like talking about what if those fail. Like talking about it beforehand, like, ooh, what, you have like 4 partners and one of them has herpes, and what would happen if I end up breaking out with herpes? How do you feel about that? Like, how would you want me to tell you? How would that affect you? Or, if we have sex and I get pregnant, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know young men who've had hookups and got somebody pregnant, and then at the age of 22 became dads.
Oh,
wow. Yes,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
that's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
to
Good thing to discuss.
be on the same page about. Absolutely. And something that I think a lot of people don't realize too, like, I think that we're all being a little bit more kind of female centered because of, we're females and I won't even go into that, but I didn't know until recently that so 1 out of 3 women experience some kind of like, sexual violation. I didn't realize 1 out of 6 men do. Those odds are still like horrific. And so I think it is important to begin to extend the importance of this kind of communication to however you identify. But, those were the statistics that I was really shocked by. It's 1 out of 6.
Yeah, the care of humans and people being able to advocate and have really honest discussions is so important around that. And I think that like part of it is being able to talk about it. And I think one of the reasons that I'm more aware of the number of male-bodied individuals that have been, attacked sexually or had their consent violated is because I've been in that community where we create like safe places to talk about it. And so, but it is something that's largely not discussed.
Yeah, and I think that there's less awareness, but there's also maybe even more shame around it for
Maybe
men.
again, it's because that's not okay. Men are supposed. It's this masculinity that's you have to live up to. So I really think that the way that we move forward in our culture is by accepting the wisdom that people who are raised with vaginas have to say. Right? It's understanding that wisdom, and that wisdom is everybody. It's not just for people with vaginas.
Exactly.
That people with penises also can experience all of these things, and they're not any more shamed for that experience.
Right. I think
Right.
part of it too is that I imagine that it's more emasculating. Like at least women don't have that. It's disempowering, of course, to everybody, but how
It's
emasculating.
acceptable.
Yeah. And we kind of expect that. We're raised being taught that this is a danger, a threat.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Totally.
Let's get through
Yeah.
that. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot move forward as a society with the same rules and okays. I mean, thank God R. Kelly was finally found guilty, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah. No, really?
yeah. I mean, this is finally the reckoning, and let's raise a new generation of people that are just more respectful with one another. And that's
Yep.
where all the lessons from sex positive communities, from kink, from tantra, from queer, from non-binary. I mean, all the gender stuff, all of this stuff is so important because there's so much wisdom in it to bring out to everybody. That we can all respect one another and move away from that patriarchal, men aren't sexually molested, or it's okay if women are sexually assaulted,
Yeah.
And by having conversations and reckoning that like sexuality is a really important part of who you are as human. And that's where my work as a doctor and sexuality kind of come together. Because the thing that I always just blows my mind is that sex is the fundamental thing we're put on earth to do, right? To
Yeah.
replicate.
Totally.
And yet we are given this beautiful gift of enjoying it if we can, right? Like so many of us get, and not everybody could enjoy it, and that's okay. And not everybody, the trauma around it makes it difficult to enjoy. But if there was no trauma around it, we could probably like all in some ways enjoy some kind of sexuality with another person beyond penis and vagina. And that sexuality brings us into our bodies. It takes us away from our heads and into our bodies, into a place of pleasure. And what better way of getting well than that?
Yeah, I agree. Sign me up.
Yep.
I'm there.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
totally.
why are we so scared to talk about it?
Right.
Right.
Because it's powerful.
Yeah.
It is. It is. I feel so powerful every time I initiate the conversation and I start to build the framework upon which whatever this relationship looks like, that's being built on. That's like, this is the groundwork that I'm doing right here by having that talk and by opening up that communication and starting it with just total honesty. And then from that point on, anything that doesn't meet that level feels like, ooh, I've taken a step back. And so you learn more and more to keep that openness and honesty going. And so it really does, like, it doesn't just stop there at the stars
Right,
talk. Like
right.
it continues and it sets a precedence. So
It's
Well
definitely
said.
a good, it's a scaffolding to build a healthier, consensual, conscious relationship with another person, even if
Yeah.
it's just for one night.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, right, exactly. I agree. You're going to have a better night, or again, if you set the precedence for a relationship, a long-term relationship. I mean, just if you're avoiding the stars conversation in the beginning, just imagine how much harder it's going to be to bring it up later. It's just, you're laying the foundation for healthy communication-based relationship. How you're relating in the relationship.
And
That's everything.
you're taking care of your sexual wellness, which is a real huge part of your whole person wellness too.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just about exercising and eating your 5 greens a day.
Yeah, right. It's connected to your mortality in some cases. So
Sexuality is a really fundamental life force energy, and it's beautiful. It connects us to other people. It's also something that can be very traumatizing. So why don't we try to work to make it as good as we can make it? And that means sometimes talking about it.
yeah. Amen, sister. Amen.
Yeah.
Feeling you.
And sometimes if it makes you nervous to talk about something, that means the reward is going to be even greater. But you have to just kind of go through it and let that nervousness happen and just continue to say the things that you need to say anyway.
And you don't have to do it perfectly.
No, yeah, exactly.
Right. And it's better to be uncomfortable and lean into that fear and, get it over with. You're going to feel proud of yourself afterwards. And even if you end up discovering things that make you and the person that you're, feeling things out, with no pun intended, if you discover during that communication process that you're incompatible, then better sooner than later.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, very much so.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody
Right.
wants to get married and the other person just wants a hookup,
Right.
then you start working. It could become manipulative.
Totally,
Yep.
totally. The next thing you know, you're being hashtag me too. You know.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, let's hope not. Exactly. Yeah, not yet. Knock on wood.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we have like 2 minutes.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So are there any parting thoughts or anything? So we talked about your website. Is there anything else for people to look for? I know that you're doing some work around shameless STIs, but I don't know how people find that, if that's through the STARS websites or.
It is, and also through my EveleenDacker.com.
Okay.
And once I'm hopefully going to finish filming this course this week, so it should be available next month sometime
Nice.
to access. I have some things on YouTube you could find under my name. And if you want more about the STARS talk, I also have a TEDx talk that I did
Oh,
on
that's
STARS.
great.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
wow.
There you go. That's awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
fantastic.
wonderful.
Great.
Because it's important, and I really want to get this concept out there. If somebody
Yes.
has a better acronym and does it better, yes, please. I'm not like attached to anything, but
Yeah.
I really feel that taking this wisdom and bringing it to everybody out of, it doesn't just belong in the sex positive communities.
Right.
We could all be sex
You know what I
positive.
was actually
Yeah,
thinking?
absolutely.
You know what I was thinking a little while ago is that it would be really great if we just took the time to put it in Urban Dictionary and make a Wikipedia page about it.
Yes.
Ooh,
You know,
what a
anyone
good
can make a
idea.
Wikipedia page. So
What a great idea.
Ding, ding, ding,
I've
ding.
never thought of that.
yeah,
Me neither.
I was actually just
Look at
thinking
you,
too.
marketing girl.
Yeah, right. I know. I'm a good think tank person. I just saw a new acronym just yesterday because I like to go down wormholes on YouTube, and it was about flirting, and it was Hot Ape. I wish I remembered the lady's name,
Hot
but
Ape.
you know how to flirt with people. If you don't know, is the H is for humor. It's great to start out with humor if you're a humorous person. That is.
Okay, we got that.
Yep, and then open body language. So don't cross your arms. Open body language. Touch, like a non-invasive touch. You know, like
on the
she was-
hand.
right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you know, lower
start-
arm. Or she
start
was also
safe.
mentioning just kind of like what is this called? The C7 vertebra.
The nape.
The
Nape
hunch,
of the
whatever,
neck.
where you get a hunchback.
Hunch of your
the,
back.
the hunch of your back. Touch my
So,
hunchback.
Touch their hump.
Touch their hump. Touch my hump. And then in the ape, A is for attention, so you give them your attention. Duh. P is for proximity. Get a little closer.
Oh.
And then I is for eye contact.
Oh.
Yeah. So those are the things that
Hot ape.
is our human flirtation body language. But I think
If you need to remember that, then you're not, you know, I'm sorry. All those things are pretty obvious.
there's some neural diversity going on there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Being a
Hot
neurally
ape.
diverse person, I could say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on
Yes,
the show.
thank you.
Thank you for inviting
it's been
me.
Such
That
a
was-
pleasure.
Wonderfully informative. I hope y'all got a lot out of it too.
Yes. And the links are in the show notes. Please visit the website, the STARS website. And we will see you
next Tuesday.
I don't know how it started. I don't know what you did. Now I'm the gal that's chasing you up. Really flip my lid. Come here, you eager beaver, baby. Eager beaver, baby. Eager beaver, baby. Eager beaver, well, what are you gonna do with this eager beaver, baby of mine? Ooh, I'm all there beside you, no matter where you stop. I'll follow you to movies, even to the barber shop.